We can kind of go back to the gym thing because I have another thing I want to talk about. But moving forward a second, so Joe Rogan, earlier this week, he had this lady that he has on a lot. Her name's Dr. Rhonda Patrick, and
she's very smart.
She's amazing. And one of the biggest things that she always talks about is longevity, like how to live longer. And there's a lot of things that she promotes.
And if you're a person with a spinal cord injury, you have something against you called your fucking spinal cord injury. So listen to what Rhonda has to say.
And she actually talked in the last episode about, in particular, people with disabilities. And one of the biggest things that she and Joe were going back and forth, they always talk about this, but is the sauna, the Finnish sauna. That's dry heat. Because so they've done like a lot of studies over the past few years, and she hasn't been on Joe's podcast in like well over a year.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, she had a baby, and so there was a lot of things. She hasn't been on in like at least 18 months.
Yeah.
But she just came back on this week, and so they've done a lot more studies on sauna since the last time she went on. And one of the craziest things that they've been able to prove is that 25 minutes in the sauna. So there's a couple things I wrote down.
How many times a day? Or I mean, how many times a week?
Yeah, I'll share the specifics. So basically, this is just the recommended. Any amount of sauna, even just once a week, is good and will raise a lot of different things. But I'm going to share like the ideal amount that they're recommending.
And doesn't this have to do with something called heat shock proteins?
Yeah, but it doesn't really matter. Like, basically, this is what's kind of crazy about it. So after correcting for socioeconomic status, physical activity, blah, 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 all that stuff, like they've corrected for all the reasons why something might be better or worse for you. If you sauna 4 to 7 times a week at 175 degrees Fahrenheit for 25 minutes or 20 to 25 minutes, first of all, it decreases all-cause mortality by up to 40%. So that means for any reason that you might die, you just decrease that by 40%, which is insane. So just going in the sauna, literally for 20 minutes at 175 degrees, 4 to 7 times a week can decrease your mortality rate by 40%, which is insane.
Before we go any further,
unheard of.
I just want to make one little brief
thing. There's nothing
thing
that you can do.
If you're a person with a spinal cord injury and you go into the sauna, get out of your chair because your chair will get really hot and it'll burn you. But also when you sit down, like
sit on a towel or something.
Like make sure you don't get burns. Like because you can get 170 degrees is hot. Like make sure you're constantly like looking at your skin and like making sure it's blanching and like move your butt around because you're sitting on a hard surface.
A lot of gyms, like local gyms, will not get that hot. Honestly, the one at Lifetime sometimes gets up to 180. I've seen it.
Didn't Crunch used to get hot as shit, but every time some dumbass would open and close the door.
Well, it's really tiny. That one doesn't get that hot, honestly. The problem with a lot of saunas is like in gyms, they're not built ideally. They just kind of like, we can put the sauna there. It's just like a weird spot
it's
for
an
it.
Afterthought.
It's kind of an afterthought. It's not a main concern. But the other thing that's crazy is one sauna session literally to your body. After measuring, okay, so let's say you go do a 25-minute run, a jog, a cardiovascular activity. The benefits to your body are the exact same by doing sauna for that same amount of time. So if you are sedentary, going and literally just sitting in the sauna for that same amount of time is literally doing a cardiovascular activity because your heart rate increases like crazy. Your blood is flowing all around your body because it's trying to... What's it called when your body is self-regulating?
Well, that's something that some people with spinal cord injuries have difficulty with, is being able to sweat and regulate their own temperature.
Yeah.
Their autonomic system is fucked up.
Exactly. But what's crazy is like so many people that don't want to do cardio, it's because it's fucking hard. And people associate sauna with like a spa and like relaxing. They're like, ooh, I'm going to go to a sauna. So it's a really easy way to start just like sweating.
I can fuck cardio and just go chill.
Like literally you can.
I can play on my phone.
Dead ass.
Is there a way to turn a bathroom into a sauna? Like, can you turn the hot water as hot as shit?
You can do...
like turn the shower on and just sit next to the toilet or something?
The problem is that is now steam, and you can like literally cook your body. So the problem with steam saunas is even though it's not as hot... Because
there's a difference between a sauna and a steam room. Very different.
Yes. And the thing about the Finnish sauna is that it's a dry heat. They do sometimes in Finland, they pour water on the coals to make it hotter.
You know Sebastian? Loop Whoop?
Yeah.
He always about that sauna.
Yeah. And it's amazing. Like it feels amazing. And the other thing about it is it's like you're literally sweating out everything. Like you just feel amazing afterwards because you sweat out like all the shit that's just like sitting in your skin, you know, like all the toxins or whatever the fuck you want to call them.
Yeah,
but literally like all
the gunk.
You just for the same reasons that you drink a ton of water when you're working out, it's because you're sweating out all the shit. And you do need to like, drink have like a more sodium intake after doing the sauna and stuff like that. There's a lot of things you need to like do, maybe even consult with your doctor before doing it. But like for the most part, it's crazy because it's like the first time that they've been able to prove that like you can basically fuck cardiovascular activity and just sit in the sauna. Like it's literally insane. And if you have a gym, I mean, chances are there's a gym nearby you that has a sauna. Some of them don't always get as hot as you would like them to or whatever. But, and there's definitely going to be challenges, especially if you're like a wheelchair user, of like the logistics of getting inside of it, transferring in, like however you got to do it. But like just for the general health of people, like the benefits of sauna are like insane. And not only that, like they've done tons of studies on depression, dude. Like elevating your body temperature by just a couple degrees for a couple times a week can do wonders for depression, because like typically when you're like sedentary and like laying in bed all day and just depressed as shit, like your body's not experiencing any elevated temperatures, you're not sweating at all.
Fact. I've been there. You're just basically,
dude, when you start,
you're a flat line.
Yeah,
that's all you are.
When you sit in a sauna, it's literally all you're doing is just sitting there. But it's been shown that they can elevate people's moods just by sauna. Like it's a really powerful thing to elevate that body temperature. And like you said, that it also creates heat shock proteins in your body that are insanely beneficial to longevity. Like they're just these and the other thing is like 20 minutes in the beginning is going to feel like forever, but your body gets accustomed to it. And then that also helps with your own body's regulation, because you're basically throwing it into like a really intense environment. So the next time you're in a really hot environment, you're more like acclimated. Like, people that live in the desert, like it's not as hot to them as if you traveled to the desert. True. You'd be like melting.
I remember when I came to visit Atlanta the first time, I almost passed out. But now I'm ATL.
It's fine.
I'm like ATL ho, what up? You can actually get at-home saunas. Did you know this? It's basically like a little tent. It's like a tent. You sit in this tent and your head keeps out of it.
The benefits of those have been, it's hard to prove them because they're not FDA approved. So it's hard to do tests on those things. But also your head is not in it. So it's
weird.
It's not been proven in any kind of clinical studies because that device is not FDA approved, because they talked about that on Joe Rogan. But to go back to your question about having a hot bath, you can not
necessarily a bath, but like just steam up the bathroom. Yeah,
I'm sure it has benefits, but it's not the exact same as going into a dry sauna. But there is, and also hot baths have been proven. And just like hot, there's also cold shock proteins doing like ice plunges and things like that.
The Wim Hof method.
They also have a lot of benefits as well. Like a lot in Finland, especially where sauna is really popular. They literally just go jump in the river, like where it's literally just freezing cold.
Well, I saw Sebastian do this one thing where it was snowing outside. He'd get in the sauna, he'd jump outside, roll around in the snow, get back in the sauna, melt, jump back outside, roll around in the snow.
And it's actually really good for you and it feels amazing.
Yeah, so if you guys want to know more about Dr. Rhonda Patrick, episode 1474, Dr. Rhonda Patrick is a PhD in biomedical science and an expert on nutritional health. Her podcast and other videos can be found at foundmyfitness.com.
Yeah, and she has her own podcast.
But whatever.
Her own podcast is really hard to get through, honestly, because it's very
technical, probably.
Technical. If you're into that type of stuff, like, wow.
Well, she
is a great resource. But hearing her talk to Joe puts it in such layman's terms and gets her to simplify things.
Because Joe is a smart idiot. Like he's a dummy and he knows he's a dummy, but he's a smart dummy. So like when he has conversations with people, he knows how to ask the right questions so that other dummies like me can understand what these experts are saying. I think Joe is a really cool way to like take someone who's like way too smart for their own good, that like people don't understand because they're way too technical, and then
brings them back down
and then brings them back to Joe's world. Like I worked at Apple at one point, and some of the salespeople that were too technical would have a hard time selling computers because they'd be talking about processors and graphics cards and memories and hard drives and, you know, screen resolutions and this and that. And your everyday person's like, I don't give a shit. Like, does it do my Facebook?
There's no context.
Does it give my Facebook and Netflix a good job? Like, I check email, you know, like they didn't get it. But the people that were talking about like what you could do with it was different. But it's kind of, I think the same way. It's like she can be like, well, this study with this amount of people and this correlation and this and that. He's like, okay, but like, what does that mean though? You know?
Yeah, exactly. And she'll say like some random abbreviation, and he's like, people don't know what that means. She's like, oh yeah, you're right.
It's like, what is that? What does
or
that
like,
mean?
I'm taking 5 millimoles of this and blah, blah, blah. The other crazy thing that she talked about, holy shit. The whole beginning of the podcast was all about this and how vitamin D is highly linked to coronavirus deaths. People that have died because of, if you die because of coronavirus, the chances that you have a vitamin D deficiency is extremely high.
So if you're an overweight person who's depressed and vapes, you're
most
fucked.
Most Americans are vitamin D deficient because we don't go out enough, because vitamin D is caused by sun exposure. Your body produces it after you're in the sun.
I wonder if that's why I like the summer better, because I'm outside more often and I'm less sad.
Well, duh, yeah. But like also vitamin D production, like vitamin D is one of the most crucial things to your immune system.
What if you supplement? Can you supplement with vitamin D?
You can supplement. Like listen to the podcast. They talked in detail about all of this.
Andrew, I don't want to listen to it. I want to listen to you tell me about it, okay?
I'm just relaying the information. But one of the interesting things is a lot of people with dark skin, because they have melanin, they can't get vitamin D in places that don't have as much sun exposure. So if you're a black person that is living in Scotland, for example, you are going to have vitamin D deficiency because your body is not going to be getting enough sun to produce vitamin D, because melanin is basically nature's sunblock. Like your body is literally blocking the sun's rays, and so you are not going to have enough vitamin D. You need to supplement, and that's actually one of the hypothetical reasons why the black community is getting hit so hard with coronavirus.
Well,
especially in New York City right now.
That was something that a lot of people, experts, knew, that in pandemics, the African-American community gets hit the hardest. It's like 70-80%. It's bad. And
even when you correct for socioeconomic stuff, like it's still bad.
It's still bad, yeah. And that's something that's interesting is like, if I'm going to talk about African Americans, and when I say African Americans, I mean people that have genetics linked all the way back to slavery, like those African Americans, not Africans that live in America. And that gene pool, that genetic line, like usually during slave times, was bred for like the top, right? So like the most elite female would breed with the most elite male, and this is fucked up because we used to treat people like livestock. Like, can you imagine? That's insane.
I wouldn't say we, but yeah, people that lived in America did. Yes.
Yeah, I personally didn't, obviously.
I don't like to link myself to that shit, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's not fun to talk about, obviously, because it brings up a lot of emotions, but it's
it's also interesting. There's a random side note. Usually white people that have generational wealth, that generational wealth comes from a family that owned slaves. That's
a big generalization, but sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's a massive generalization, but like
generational wealth could be one generation ago.
I'm talking about multi-generational wealth. I'm talking about
okay, sure. That's a big generalization, but yeah.
Anyway, so
I mean, I don't think anyone's disagreeing, but
so what they would pick out like the strongest and the fastest, and you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what they were also doing was breeding really bad things like heart problems and like diabetes problems and like a lot of like weird like genetic stuff that like now the African American community is like getting like fucked because there's a lot of things with their bodies that are not optimal, because back in the day through slavery they were bred for a very specific purpose. It's messed up. It's messed up to think about, but
yeah, obviously there's a lot of systematic oppression and all that stuff.
Yeah, but there's a reason.
But you're right. It goes back to biological.
Same thing with the AIDS epidemic, the African American community, or epidemic, whatever you want to call it. Pandemic, I think.
Epidemic. I don't think it was a pandemic, because a pandemic is like worldwide catching it. I mean, AIDS is through sexual exposure, right?
No, but it's still worldwide. It's
whatever.
It's a worldwide thing. I
don't think it's a pandemic. I think it's an epidemic.
Epidemic is localized. Pandemic is universal. Is worldwide. Anyway, bottom line, African American communities do get hit harder, and it's especially with Corona, and now that you're saying that it's linked to vitamin D, that also makes a lot of sense too.
Well, vitamin D is just like super important for your immune function in total. Like it's way more important than I ever knew. And it's funny because like people always like talk about vitamin C when they're talking about immunity a lot of times. Or
drink orange juice, take emergency, take airborne, whatever.
And like there's not necessarily anything that disproves that those things like help, but it's like you're also just consuming a lot of sugar. But the thing that Rhonda was talking about that was just like so fascinating is just how crazy like the studies that they've done linking like coronavirus to vitamin D deficiency. Like it's absolutely nuts, and no one's come out and said it like publicly because there's not anything that's 100% proven or peer reviewed.
Well, that's what's hard.
But
is like
vitamin D is one of the easiest things to supplement, and it could be the one major thing that is life or death with, or even getting symptoms or or not being symptomatic at all.
It's interesting that correlation does not equal causation. Hope you enjoyed that clip. If you'd like to see the full episode, click right here. If you'd like to subscribe, click here. If you'd like more clips, we got 2 more right over here.